I didn't have a body, but it felt like I was really light. And I said, I don't want to die. Many humans are angels in bodies. I think we're eventually going to be moving that way. Then we begin to see interdimensional beings, but there's really no time. We are a creator.
Welcome, everyone, to Our Sliver of Time. Today we have a very special guest, Tyler Deal, who had a near-death experience as a result of a mountain biking accident. We're going to talk about his near-death experience and a whole bunch more follow-up questions. But first and foremost, thank you so much, Tyler, for being here. I'm happy to have you on.
Thanks, Dave. I appreciate you reaching out, and I'm happy to be on here too. Thank you.
What was the event that kind of led to this experience in the first place?
I don't think there was one particular event that led to it other than just my state of mind at the time and my state of being. I didn't like myself, and I realized that was not the real me. That was basically self-critical and self-analyzing and seeing that reflection from the world around me, from other people. I was going to college at the time, and I just became very depressed. I didn't like who I was at that time. So no defining moment. I think there was a series of moments where I came from a space of, oh, this life sucks. I just don't want to be here. And I couldn't fully engage or embrace even the beauty around me.
It doesn't sound like you could pinpoint a specific reason. Maybe you could, I'm not sure. But how long was this persisting for prior to kind of getting out of that mindset?
Probably since I was about 5 years old. And so it was because of my environment. It was because, yeah, school environment, home environment, and not to blame that because I see it from a different perspective now. I don't see it as, I see it more now as my creation to find the way back, to who I am, which is a continual process. I think it always will be, really. So I think it was a build up, and especially the last year at high school, there was a contradiction of finding spirituality and then also looking at my demons, looking at my shadow aspects, and then getting into moving back to California, going to college, having all of that, which I was suppressing, come to the light, being shown to me, and I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't have the support to handle it. I did have support, but they were far away. Like I had a spiritual teacher who was incredibly supportive, but she was far away, and I didn't have immediate support in my environment. So I felt like there was something wrong with me and that everybody else was okay. So it was progressive, and then it just became too intense for me to handle. So I thought there was something really, really wrong with my life and who I was. So that perpetuated the thought and the feeling of not wanting to be on the planet, not wanting to be here anymore. So that became, because now I believed in God, that became my declaration, or my calling for help was to say I wanted a way out. I didn't want to be here. And so that did get an answer. And that was after my second year going to this college. And it was just after the second year, it was in May. That's when I had my experience in the forest.
Your experience that you're referring to, I presume, is the mountain biking accident. I'm curious, how much, was mountain biking like a form of escape? Was this something, did it give you joy? Not even form of escape, but like, were you doing it as enjoyment? Was it just something to do? Like, how does it make you feel when you rode a mountain bike? And also, have you rode a mountain bike since this accident?
Good questions. Yeah. So I think initially when I would think about mountain biking, it was a form of escape. But then when I actually started to do it, it was there was joy there. I was in the redwood forest. Sometimes I wasn't, sometimes I was on the road, but there was a freedom to it. And it wasn't anything like a competitive thing for me. It was just I had a mountain bike and I went mountain biking. It wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna compete and wear a helmet and put on the gear. So it did bring relief in the moment for me to be able to just to go into the woods and find places that were completely desolate where I could like be in a meadow, and lay down and look up at the trees. And then so I would spend a lot of time doing that alone. And then I also had like a party side where I would be partying with the people that I met. And that didn't seem to help my state of being either, getting drunk or smoking a lot of weed or so. To answer your second part of your question, I don't have a mountain bike now, but I have done mountain biking. It's fun. I don't really attribute to like me going on trails now as to what happened in the past. So yeah, there was never really any fear there as far as like getting back into it, if that answers your question.
That does answer my question. I think that's fantastic. After an event like the one, the accident that you had on the bike, it's good to know that, you're not gonna like not touch a mountain bike because of what happened. Everyone's different how they handle that type of stuff. You mentioned that you were doing some partying. My understanding was you were listening to some bands and partying. Did you continue to party after your near-death experience, or like what is that situation like?
Yeah, I did actually, because went, I decided I wasn't going to go back to college and I just wanted to go traveling. So I ended up getting a visa for Australia. I went there and I did a lot of drinking and marijuana. Yeah, the near death experience had nothing to do with like me stopping, partying. It wasn't like I had this big aha moment. It's been years of processing. I mean, initially it was like, oh, I was given another chance, but I still had the patterns within me that wanted to, escape through, drinking and other stuff.
I think it's a very interesting point that you bring up. Some people, they might have a near-death experience, and like you said, it's an aha moment where, oh, I'm doing everything wrong, and they clean up their act and do everything right, and for other people, it's like, okay, they've come this close to death and it doesn't even change their patterns. It's very interesting from person to person, how that varies. And I presume now you're not doing any more partying. Not to be too personal.
No, no, you can be personal. No, I don't. I'm sober. Yeah, so but it was a little bit of both. Like I don't know if it was a little bit of both. It felt like that. It felt like I was still there was part of me that was more spiritual and wanted to heal, and there was a yearning to be able to serve others through, healing work and making people laugh and stuff like that. But there was also, doing the other stuff, drinking and partying. So I think, yeah, because life is messy, right? I mean, what is spiritual, what isn't? It's all spiritual. It's like I can't look at even that part of myself and say, oh, that's not spiritual, because all of it is held within, the heart of God. So I really believe that it was perfect for me, that journey. And I can't tell you exactly when I like said no, I'm not going to do it anymore, but it was several years ago that I was decided that, drinking or smoking dope was just not my thing, and I'd rather just experience life, all of it.
Would you say in hindsight that the experience was beneficial to your growth as a person?
Yeah, I think so. I didn't have support, so I didn't see what I had as an addiction, so I don't know if it was an addiction. I didn't have support or people telling me that, hey, look, we think that you're drinking too much, or, you're high all the time, because the people that I was around were doing the same thing. Looking back in hindsight, I would have liked to have had more support, but yeah, it's an experience. So it's not good or bad. It's just an experience I had. And at some point I made a decision to stop.
This near-death experience, how did this come about? Were you riding by yourself?
Yeah, and I mostly was riding by myself, even prior to this. But yes, on this particular day, it was early in the morning. I lived in a farmhouse with five people. And I just remember taking my bike, decided to go do what I normally did, hit a few jumps, go into the trails. That's what I did. I headed for the forest. I don't know, I was in there probably a couple hours or so. And I started to head back down the hill towards where the university is. And I hit the jumps that I normally did and went around the trees. And then it was basically the very last jump that I hit. And I noticed that when I was coming off of it, that, oh, somebody had built this up way bigger than I was remembered, the previous days or weeks. So my body wasn't used to that. And I knew when I hit it, it was like a moment of, oh, I'm screwed, because I didn't know how to hit the jump. And that's when I crashed. I just went flying way up in the air, came down on my front tire. And then my body just flipped and I was knocked out.
So just to clarify, you didn't bail the bike away? You stayed on the bike the whole time until you hit.
I did. Yeah. Like I really didn't know how to bail a bike because I don't think I really crashed. I mean, there were a few times when I like tipped the bike over when I was leaning too far over, but I didn't know how to bail a bike,
It's
so it was like it happened, and then I was just staying on it. And then, yeah, I don't know how to answer that. Like
well,
I think,
it's not as easy to kick a bike away from under your feet than like a skateboard, right? So it's not
right.
like,
Or a surfboard or something like, right. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So I was going to say snowboard, but snowboards, you can't really kick them out from under you.
That's the scary part to me though, because like I need to be able to kick the board away. I don't want to break my legs because it's attached to me, you know?
Yeah. So I don't bail the bike. Yeah. And I just hit really hard and then I was knocked out. I guess you could say the next moment, but there's really no time, is when I guess it was me. It felt like me. It felt familiar. I'm going to say my soul was floating above the trees, was experiencing, I don't know want to say bliss, but it just felt like connection. Like it was a feeling of just deep connection with everything around me. I didn't have a body, but it felt like I was really light. I could feel, energy around me. I could feel even like the elements, like the wind, almost like the wind was going right through my whatever it was, whoever I was. And everything was really heightened at that moment. Like I could hear things from far away, like dogs and birds. I could see the ocean that was far out into the distance. I just felt like this oneness with my environment, but it was like a nature environment. I didn't have any connections with any beings or any people in that moment, but it felt natural to me. It just felt like, oh, this is how the earth is. I wasn't thinking this at the time, but I'm thinking about it. I've thought about it like, oh, this is how the earth is. And we don't even see that. Like, it's really that powerful and that magical. And just to be here is so. I don't know how long I was in that space, but I do remember at a point, like looking down and seeing my body on the ground and my bike, just the frame bent and everything. And I did hear a voice though. And I do feel like it was me, but I don't know for sure. I feel like it was me asking the question, do you want to go further or do you want to go back? And I said, I don't want to die. So as soon as I said that, I was back in my body and I felt the pain. So I was on the ground, kind of twisted up, looking up at the trees around me. Yeah. So I just felt like all the pain rushing, like the blood rushing through my body again, and feeling all the types of pain, like the soreness and the electrical pain, and trying to catch my breath. There was a lot coming back into that body in that moment. I opened my eyes, but I remember also almost like being able to see energy or see, around me. And it became more clear that I could see fairies around me, what I would call fairies. Some people would say pixies, nature beings that have wings, that fly around. And there were a lot of them. They knew that I was there, and they were coming flying around me. I did hear like little giggles. So it was just a kind of a humbling moment at that time, to temporarily take my attention away from my pain and experience, these little beings that really do exist.
When you talk about these fairies that you saw, are we talking angels? Are we talking, in your opinion, is there a difference between the two?
In my opinion, I would say that they would be closer to like earth spirits. They're real and they have bodies. They're just on a higher frequency level where we can't see them in these bodies, at least not yet. A lot of people can, especially children can see them. Yeah, as far as angels, I don't really know. I know that there are angels. I believe that many humans are angels in bodies as well, but I would say that these particular beings were, like guardians of the forest, or that was their home.
So when you're outside of your body, you talk about a heightened awareness. You were on top of the redwood trees. Do you think that has to do with like a liberation of the senses that is almost like a limitation of the human body?
I think the body can have limitations, especially within our environment, the food that we eat, and also our emotional system, our mental emotional structure. There could be millions of people that see fairies. I don't know, so humbly spoken, that's my experience Dave, is basically that, it's not like I can go to the necessarily go to the general store down the street and be like, oh yeah, like how was your day? Yeah, I just saw fairies. It's like there's a gauge with how open, and people could. Like I do know that children are very open to them. And even when I was a child, I could see them, and I was very connected to the land that I lived on when I was like 3 or 4 years old. I do think the body does have limitations, and it has to do with how connected we are to love, because when we're connected to the love that we already are, that opens that vision a little bit more. We have chakra system, and the first three chakras house our learning. That's why it's like three chakras, 3D, our learning here on the planet. And once we reach a certain point where we move beyond the limitation, meaning we move beyond believing that we are separate from the rest of creation, then the energy moves up into our heart. When our heart begins to flower more and more so, then we begin to see interdimensional beings. We begin to experience more of the fullness of our multidimensional self, from that space of love. So that's why I say children, because children haven't had all the conditioning. They haven't gone through beginning to develop their ego mind. And so a lot of kids are, not all kids, but a lot of kids have a very open heart. And so that's why they can see energy, and they can see their ancestors, and they can see nature spirits. Yeah, our body does have limitations. The ego, I would call that like the false self, for example. That's not who we really are. And so when we come into these bodies, we're already perfect awakened beings that don't have any limitations. We come into these bodies whole and complete. We are always whole and complete, but we come in without any conditions, without any restrictions. You can just see, how much babies glow is because their being is so alive within them, and they're so spontaneous. They can laugh 1 second, they can cry the next second. And this is why I say not all children, because I think, some are in dire circumstances. Like they might not have parents that are taking care of them. They might have to figure out life on their own. And it depends on the amount of conditioning. The United States, like, it's very conditioning. We have these systems, we have the school system. Everyone's telling us how to think and how to be. So that's one system. We have a family system that's, it has to be a certain way. You have your parents that have their history and that have their conditioning. So we're told constantly as children what we can and cannot do. Constantly, like every second, basically, how we can live, how we can't live. And as children, we just want to play. And as adults, I think we do as well. We just want to play. Yeah, it's going to really depend on the individual. Some kids are given the freedom. They say, oh, I see this person next to you, and they might see an ancestor. And some parents will be like very open to that. So I think we're eventually going to be moving that way, but we still have a lot of work to do. As adults, being conditioned, thinking we have to go to work from 9 to 5 every day, going to school where we're told what history is, and which may or may not be true, giving our power away to government systems that really don't have our best interest in mind. We forget that we are a sovereign being. We are a creator. We are a sovereign creator that creates this whole reality. I know I'm going a little bit off topic, but I am passionate about that, as far as reclaiming the creatorship that we each have within ourselves, so we can make this world a happier place. But it does start with us, and it does start with the connections we make with others. Whatever comes across my consciousness is a creation of me. That includes the cop chasing me down, when I'm skating in a car park, right? That was the old days. I don't know if they do that anymore, but it's
they do that.
Do they?
All the time.
Yeah. So like yeah. So when we can see that what's in front of us is what we've created, then we can begin to change our creations in a way where we don't have to continue to create the same patterns. And that's not just the cop chasing you down. That's in relationship patterns, that's in communication with people, that's in the boss that you get a new job and it's the same boss that criticizes you. So when we can see that, like, oh, okay, so this is me, I want to create something different, then and more people do that, then it's like a ripple effect. And that's what's happening. I believe that's what's happening right now, because if we just focus on the light all the time, then we're ignoring the demons and the darkness and those parts of us that come out. So there's no good or bad here. And I think that masters like Jesus knew this. I think he existed. And just like there's a goddess here on this island, Tutu Pele, and she's a volcano goddess. She actually used to be a human. She came from Tahiti. And so she was a real life human.
Do you think, you talk about the volcano goddess or something? This is the first I've heard of this. Do you think, which is fine. Do you think the Earth itself is like a living organism? Do you think it's alive?
Yes, absolutely. She's alive. Yeah, she's very much alive.
Okay, so
Yeah.
so she's a female. Is she
Yes.
is she like an actual female or like a Gen Z, you know, female?
I wouldn't say that. That would be more like because we have so much as far as male female now in the world, as far as what's politically correct. I would say like
I'm halfway kidding.
yeah, I know, I know. I would look at it like masculine and feminine. So you can be male, you could be in a male body and have more feminine traits, and vice versa. So I would say that yeah, feminine, and she is, and everything on her is part of her, including these bodies that we have. So yes, she's very much a being that's been through a hell of a lot for a very, very long time.
When you left your body during the experience, when you were floating above the redwood trees, was there a realization, was there like a shock factor to this, or was it kind of just like a matter of fact, like, oh, I guess I'm just up here now?
I would say it would be more like, oh, this is familiar. It wasn't like oh wow. Like there was a element of surprise at that moment. But it was more like, oh, this is how it is. This is how the earth really is. This is how the elements really are. This is how my ability to be able to be at one with everything around me is that's fully natural. That's how it should be. That was more that than being like, oh wow, if that makes sense. Like yeah,
Well,
it was.
it's interesting that you say it felt familiar. I'm so intrigued by this. So many people say it's like a familiarity, and did it feel natural? This was like a natural, familiar feeling, like maybe as if you had been there before.
I don't know if I existed. It was just a feeling of um it just felt natural. Like, when you speak something or you say something or you hear somebody say something, it's like you can hear the truth coming through their voice, right? So or you might cringe if they're telling a lie, or there's a body part of you that contracts. So it's I would say it's closer to that opening of truth. I guess it would be a feeling of neutrality, like there wasn't like good or bad, but a feeling within that neutrality, just a feeling of familiarity, or this is how it should be.
Who is Tyler as a person? You said you still, sometimes will mountain bike, you have your cats, what's fun for Tyler?
What's fun for Tyler? Um, yeah, so like hobbies, like I love surfing. Um, I love dancing. I do a static dance here. They have a thing on Sunday. Actually, it's going on right now. I love hiking. I love traveling. I love listening to music. I love cooking. Yeah. So the person of Tyler likes to do just normal human things. I guess you call them normal. I don't know. In the way that I do them might not be normal. But I like spending time with myself. I love spending time with the people I love. So that's important to me too. I love making new connections with people.
What type of dancing did you say?
Ecstatic dancing. Have you heard of that? It's
I
like it's
haven't,
kind of
but
like freestyle.
okay,
Yeah,
like
there's
break
a
dancing?
I
You do the head
guess you
spin?
could do break dancing. It's funny. I just had a image. I took a break dancing class, but yeah, so it's basically however their body moves. So there's a DJ and there's different types of music that they play. So if there's a good one that's playing, then I might, somebody that I like, then I might go dance. But yeah, but it's not formal. It's not like tango, which I had learned years ago, or modern dance, or the salsa, or anything like that. There's no form. There's no structure to it.
Is this like for you, is it like an expression of the soul? Whatever, not even emotions, but like whatever you're feeling, I suppose, in that moment, you can just act it out and express that.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. It's really giving the freedom to allow your body to move however it wants is like the expression of the spirit or the soul coming through your body. So it can be a very spiritual experience for a lot of people too, you know, just allowing your body to move and getting out of your mind and getting into your heart and your body and just seeing where that takes you. We are creating workshops that are connecting people, allowing people to connect on a deeper level, authentically, through play. So there's a lot that goes into not necessarily creating the workshops, but there's a lot that goes into certain games. So we create these games where people learn to be very authentic and in the moment, and very real. So there's basically it's holding space and then allowing people to come together in a way that's very deep and connecting. And the play comes in because play and discovering our own authenticity. And there's also the element of improv. So improv meaning like improv theater that is incorporated into some of these authentic games as well, or not necessarily incorporated, but it's part of the workshops that we create. This is all about not only self-discovery, because when we can learn how to play again, we discover ourselves, but we discover ourselves through other people. And I think that's the most important thing in what we're creating is the connections that people experience through playtime, because we all want to play and we're all ready to play again on this planet.
So between Mystics Playground, so where can they find that and where can they find you if they want to check out more of your stuff or contact you?
Sure. So they can go to mysticsplayground.com. If they are interested in our workshop, they can fill out a form there that's on the website. And we also offer coaching individually and more than one person. And for me, they can find me, I have it my own YouTube channel as well, powered by Source. I'm assuming that will be in the description as well. So those two places right there.
If you could ask one question to the person watching this video right now, what would you ask?
If I were to ask one person in the okay.
And it's a tough question. I don't even know what
Hmm.
my answer would be to that. I don't know.
Yeah, it is a tough question for sure, because I mean, I could ask many questions because of my curiosity. And the question would be as simple as, what do you want to share with me right now?
To everyone watching, thank you so much for your sliver of time. This has been ours. And Tyler, much love. Appreciate it, brother.
Appreciate you.